Yo, my name is Rhys Hickmott, and I'm a writer who likes to make weird ass, gory, edgy stories. And I just wanted to make this video to sort of yap into the ether about what I publish on Substack, really. First story I've chosen to cover is Cake the Clown. It's the first in many chapters of a sort of book, I guess a book series that I've been working on called Agent Manufacturing 101. It's heavily inspired by the SCP Foundation and Outlast trials. So basically just, weird slasher villain type people hunting down other people, and it's all funded by shady, shadowy organization who do it in the name of science. In this case, the foundation is called Achilles, named after the Greek hero who got mogged, got his bloody hell, got his leg shot, and he's like, he went from the goat to just utterly cooked. Alright, speaking of cooked, we got the main character of this story, Errol J. Trossinger. His whole deal. Let me get my notes up. Even though I'm an author and I remember a lot about my characters, I don't remember the extraneous stuff. I'm not like an encyclopedia. It's like I know the gist of what his deal is because I already wrote him. But I wrote the story back in around late December, 20th of December. And so he's born to Shelley and Bob Trossinger. They were both sort of, it was a classic sort of 80s family. You got the breadwinner husband and stay-at-home wife. Bob Trossinger, massive piece of shit, would beat the piss out of his wife all the time. His kid, Errol, he was literally the class clown type character. He'd, dress up on shows for all the younger kids. But he wasn't exactly a normal guy, so to speak. The abuse in his household rubbed off on him. I'm not going to go into all the gory details of his existence because, I don't want this video to be like a replacement for reading the book that I've written, like a short story. But I know some of you chuds, bro. I know some of you chuds just have no attention spans. So it's like someone needs to be there to help do the analysis for you. And who better than the dude who wrote it, like. But as you say, the abuse in his life led to him going down pretty screwed up paths, developing some messed up paraphilias, not helped by his time in the military, which exposed him to a lot of violence and just sort of set him down a path, to where he ends up getting arrested in some crack house that he owns in the outskirts, and people find 50 bodies. Well, they know it's 50 bodies because there's 50 tapes, right? What actually is going on is there's a big ass pool of acid, and it's all bloody, kind of when Victor gets melted in Breaking Bad. In Breaking Bad when you have to dispose of a body, they just put it in acid. Yeah. L.J. Trossinger has been doing that ever since he got back from the Marines, bro. It's crazy. It's crazy ass story, low key. Alright. So, when I'm writing, I don't take conscious inspiration. I wasn't really thinking of many serial killers when I came up with Cake the Clown. But, upon further reflection, I've found 4 of them who I think are very, I can tell they're similar in methodology, psychology, all that stuff, right? So you got John Wayne Gacy in terms of like the clown motif and his sort of like nonchalant, cocky attitude in interviews. You know, like he was a jackass in interviews. I've seen this documentary about him recently, so like he's very much on my mind. And it's just like the way he talked in his interviews, he just seems like a prick. Like, well, obviously he's a prick because he murdered all those boys, right? But it's like he seemed like a normal type of prick, not a person who you'd expect to be responsible for all these murders. And then you got Jeffrey Dahmer. You all know him. It's like he's similar to Cake in terms of like the experimentation on the victims, the compulsive nature of the crimes, and how he did a lot of it for, like, you know, self gratification. You know, I mean, that's a part of all serial killers, really. But it was evident in Dahmer, like, you know, the murdering part of his things. It was just a byproduct of what he actually wanted to do. You know, like, he didn't exactly always go out to kill, but he always wanted to, you know, have a victim who he could lobotomize chemically. It just so happened that, you know, the way he went about that resulted in murder, which is sort of a similar thing to what Cake does in the story. Cake's perfect victim is someone who just doesn't die, but they're just screaming forever. Because Cake's whole deal is that he's a sadomasochist who needs, like, auditory stimulation. You know, like if he broke his leg, right? And, you know, he was screaming in pain and stuff, right? He'd enjoy that quite a lot. He'd love, like, you know, he'd hate the pain. But, you know, he'd be hearing his screams, and it would just be perfect. Spoiler alert for the sequel, though. Turns out dying isn't that fun. You know, the pain of death is a bit too much. You know, he's hearing his skin melt, he's hearing himself scream, but all he's thinking about is, why are they enjoying this? Why are they enjoying it? This is unbelievable. Why are they enjoying this, bro? So yeah. There was Ed Gein. Took some inspiration there. Mainly in regards to, like, the trophy taking. Being a sort of loner, like, you know, outcast type person. But also, like, the strange Oedipus complex he had with his mother. Now, Cake wasn't very particularly... I thought he used Cake and Trossing interchange, but you get what I'm saying, bros. You get what I'm saying. He wasn't, like, particularly close to his mother. But, you know, seeing her get abused by his dad sort of gave him this weird sort of mental fantasy about, like, oh, I'm going to kill my dad and have my mum all to myself. But, you know, he never followed through on that. You know, he joined the Marines because he wanted to, you know, learn how to kill so he could get the balls to kill his own dad. But then when he comes back home, he realizes, oh shit, my parents are dead. And, you know, the tragedy of not being able to fulfill his one and only fantasy has sort of left him in this state of arrested development where he's trying to pursue the ultimate, like, replacement for hearing his mother scream, you know? It's some pretty fucked shit, not gonna lie. I don't know where all this comes from. It just happens in my head, bro. Like, I just come up with some fuck shit, and, you know, I write it out. Because it's like, how am I meant to have this idea in my head and not do something with it, you know? Like, how am I meant to think up a guy who wants to, like, injects people with acid and, like, records them screaming, and then when they inevitably die because, you know, injecting acid into people isn't very, you know, especially if you're doing it to meth addicts in a crack house with no sterile, like, equipment anywhere to be found. They're gonna die of something even if you put the acid in a non-lethal location, which I doubt Trossinger was much inclined to do. An interesting thing I found about Trossinger is, like, his victimology is very sporadic. a thing you learn about most serial killers is they all have a type, so to speak. Ed Gein liked women. Well, he went after female bodies, and he killed all women. I'm pretty sure I need to look into the details of that case a lot more, but I do know he killed one woman, definitely. Jeffrey Dahmer, gay men. Robert Pickton, mostly sex workers, and some other women. Gacy's quite an interesting one, because it's like all of his victims were male, but he never claimed to be gay. He claimed to be bisexual, even though if you look at like his marriages, right, he couldn't handle women in more than like short doses. You know, he had 2 wives, and both wives sort of knew something was up. Like, it's clear in terms of sexuality, he preferred men. Like, you know, all male victims. He went a lot farther with men than he could ever do with any of his wives. You know, in the interviews I've heard from him, he said he was a power guy. And, you know, he probably got a little bit of power in, you know, having his wives and being a sort of big Chicago man. But it's like, it's as if it didn't do it for him. He needed to exert control over another man because, I don't know, more of a challenge maybe. But, you know, how hard of a challenge can it be to take a kid, like a teenage boy, and chain him up and choke them to death? Like, that's not a challenge, is it? So he's just a fucking disgusting, sadistic pervert, really. And, you know, he wants to frame it as, oh, I got all this power. I got all this power over these men, bro. And it's like, nah, dog. They could fucking take you. They could fucking take you in a fight if it was man v man, fairly. If they knew what they were getting into. I'm sorry for a little tangent about John Gacy. Because, you know, watching that documentary, you know, it really puts things into perspective, you know. It puts things in, like, you know, I write about all these sick characters, right, in my stories, and then I hear about someone who has a lot of similar traits to the types of characters I cook up. Like, you know, if John Wayne Gacy and Cake the Clown were in the same room, they'd probably fucking reminisce, you know? So they're both sick bastards, but it's like, the difference is, one's a real person who hurt people, and the other one's just some bullshit I made up. Another link between them is, you know, earlier I said how John Gacy was always in denial. Like, oh, I'm not gay, I'm just bi. I just like, you know, fucking men, that's all. I don't actually like them. What the hell? No, I don't like them. And Cake's kind of the same way. Because when he's getting interviewed by Dr. Grass, he makes this big song and dance about, I don't go after kids, bro. I'm not a pedo or anything. I'm not like those other clowns. You know, I have standards, bro. 18 and above only. But it's kind of clear that, like, you know, it's a very arbitrary rule he's set for himself. It's like, it's not much of a moral thing that he doesn't go after kids to kill them. But, you know, it's more deeply rooted in like his arrested development, sort of, like, you know, he likes hearing kids laugh and adults scream. Like, that's his preferences. So, you know, if he was hearing an adult laugh or a kid scream, it'd be all out of whack in his head, basically. Like, there's a meme that I saw, so I'll put it up on the screen soon. And it is literally just how he views age. Like, he says about, when a body turns 18, something flicks in the brain and they're an adult now. So it's like, he's the type of guy who could, like if he saw a victim he wanted to hear scream, he'd just put a fucking timer on until they were 18. And the moment they turn 18 at midnight, he could just, you know, kill him however he wants to. It's very arbitrary for him. And, you know, this isn't an argument about, like, maturity or anything like that, you know. Obviously, 18 is an adult, 17 isn't. Like, that's obvious. But I'm just talking in the sense of this character's hypocrisy about how he can kill anyone, and he goes about it in such a morally repugnant way. But he draws this weird line about kids specifically. Even though he'd go for a fresh 18-year-old. Like, he's one of those guys, like, if the sort of, like, societal standard for what a kid is was lower, he'd go for them, basically. If Errol Chaucer was around in the Middle Ages, medieval time, when, like, teen marriages, teenage girls getting married off, he'd be killing teenage girls all over the place. It's not a moral thing for him. It's just part of his messed up way of rationalizing his crimes, rationalizing his perversions of, I'm a screwed up freak, but hey, I got some standards, It's messed up. And it's funny because it's age of consent. But he don't give a shit about consent. He fucking blitz attacks people. He stabs, he lures people in with meth and drugs because, his victims are usually drug addicts. Just like he's addicted to killing, very addicted to meth, and he exploits that to kill them. But it's like, consent isn't something he values, Like, theoretically, there's nothing, like, I feel like my point is a bit strange right now. Like, I'm just rambling. This whole video's been a bit of a ramble. Like, I made author notes on, like, a Word doc. But I've been going at this, like, off the cuff. I've said everything that I wanted to say, really. He goes to victims of opportunity over preference. He's got some weird Oedipus complex. Stunted development. Like, he's just stuck in this one moment of wanting to hear, like, the perfect scream. To, like, and he can just play that over and over and over and over and over and over again until he dies or whatever. But obviously that's never going to happen. He missed out on his one shot to get the perfect scream, allegedly. So, he's just going to kill people and do whatever. Just give in to his compulsion. And I think Cake is, like, a perfect example of why what Achilles as an organisation is doing is a bit, well, it's obviously immoral, but they don't give a shit about that. But it's a bit ineffective because, spoilers for the sequel, he's meant to partake in an experiment, sort of like an Outlast Trials thing. 4 people, you gotta, open up doors and do all these, like, puzzles and shit. And, obviously, Cake is meant to, like, chase them, but he's meant to, hold back a bit, And he's meant to be a scary, spooky character, haunting the halls. He isn't meant to, like, go haywire. But the moment they open the door, he kills, like, 2 people instantly. Even though he's meant to, like, hold back. So it's like, I remember John Kiriakou said that, like, when the CIA recruits, they go for sociopathic tendencies instead of full-on sociopaths, because sociopaths are difficult to control. They only have one master, and that's themselves. So, you can have the trait. You need to find the traits in a normal person. And that's not what he did with Cake the Clown. He just picked up an actual fucking dangerous sociopath and thought, we could put a leash on this thing. We'll give him a couple of victims, and he'll let other ones go free. But what's going on in his head is he's thinking, what if they give me the shit ones? What if they give me the ones that don't fucking scream good? And, that's where things get, messy. Because, he sees one and he thinks, I need it. I need to hear the screams. He's an addict, but he's always fiending for that next hit. And you can't fucking control an addict unless you take away the thing that they are hunting like that. Alright, I've been rambling for like 20 minutes now. I feel like I've gone on a little tangents here and there, but like, I feel like I'm getting across the messages about this character I wanted to get across. This is sort of like, if the story's the meat, this is the bone, so to speak. So, like, you know, don't just dig off the meat and look at the bone. Go and read the story. It's in the description. It's in the comment. You know, it's a good read, relatively short compared to the other bullshit I'm about to throw at you. I think I'm going to cover like a bunch of characters on these author notes. Hopefully, like, the next one isn't as like rambly as this one. I just got stupid interest in serial killers and yapping about fucked up people. So, you know, if you want to hear more of that, like and subscribe and all that YouTuber junk. So, you know, in conclusion, the next time my parents ask me, "Oh, Rhys, what are you doing instead of getting a job or finding a girlfriend?" I'm going to show them this video. Alright, bye.